From a defabricated garden shed in Rockland County, New York, USA, this is Stand Up with Pete Dominic. On today's episode, how to feign ignorance when your boss reminds you about that meeting you missed. And now, the podcast host who has no need to feign ignorance since he's more clever than a raven at the dumpster, Pete Dominic!
Oh, yes, it sounds like somebody missed a meeting. Oh, I've done it many times. I've missed scheduled interviews, people that I've invited to join me before, but not today. Oh, no, Pico. You will not get me today. Thank you very much, my friend, and thank you for tuning in on June 8th. 2022. That's when I'm posting today's podcast, but you can listen anytime, of course, because it's a podcast. Apparently, Steve Bannon doesn't like it when you call his show a podcast. I guess somehow that's condescending, but if he doesn't like a thing, I love the thing, and I'm very glad to have you listening to the thing because I've got two great guests joining me today. Nomiki Konst is joining me. She's running for state senate here in New York, and she's been a progressive media star for years, currently working with Sam Cedar over at the Majority Report. And I've got the legend, the most ferocious legal analyst, the man who wants justice to matter more than anybody else. It is Glenn Kirschner. Glenn joins me to preview the January 6 hearings that are going to happen tomorrow night. I invited him, by the way, to stop into our watch party. We'll be watching it together at 8 tomorrow, Thursday, the 9th, so I hope to see you there. Also, got to mention, this Saturday night, I'll be performing with Ophira Eisenberg and Christian Finnegan in Fairfield, Connecticut. 2 shows at the Fairfield Comedy Club. Get tickets at the show link. I've got links in the show notes. And, of course, don't forget to sign up for a subscription. I think that's all the plugs. StandUpPete.com right now. Sign up to join us Thursday night and to be a member of our community anytime. All right, well, it's day 504 of the Biden presidency. There are 154 days until the midterm elections, and apparently it's National Best Friends Day. So if you have close friends, you should reach out and say, hey, I'm just reaching out because it's National Best Friends Day. And I personally, Pete Dominic, I'm reaching out to all of you to say I'm so glad that so many of you have become really good friends of mine and of each other. So, okay, a few other things I wanted to mention here at the top real quick. The World Bank yesterday warned that the global economy may be headed for several years of above average inflation and below average growth. So that isn't necessarily great for you, and it's certainly not great for atmospheric CO2, which hit the highest level ever recorded in human history, apparently. So those are 2 headlines that can be pretty depressing, and this one is too. The Department of Homeland Security issued a terrorism bulletin warning of heightened domestic extremist threats as the U.S. enters the midterm elections. I don't want to depress you here at the top with the news. I do want to give it to you straight, though, as much as I can, but with a little dessert on the side whenever possible. So here's a tweet from Hillary Clinton, who wrote, Fox News won't air the January 6 hearings because they prefer their sedition made fresh on site. I like that. Also, Marjorie Taylor Greene is now being called Marjorie Taylor Groomer because she actually hired a real, actual groomer, people might say. This guy Milo, remember him? He's now an intern, and he said all kinds of things about sexual relations with children at one point, and just real bad. So I thought I'd mention that. Also, it's yesterday was Election Day in California, Iowa, Mississippi, Montana, New Jersey, New Mexico, and South Dakota. So hopefully you got the outcomes that you hope for in those states. But that's all I wanted to tell you here at the top, because I spent yesterday working with Ava and really didn't have too much time to put together a robust news segment, but I do have these great interviews. I was working with Ava. She's working on a student film on her own. I should just say a short film. She's a student. I don't know why I'm calling it a student film. It's not an assignment, but she does want to get into film school potentially, and so she's put together like a short film screenplay that she wrote, and I'm on the tech crew, and I also help produce it, and we have shot 3 days over the last couple of weeks. My parents will be starring in it next week. Very excited about that. Also, had to help her for a debate, Ava 17 Jr., is in a AP history class where she has to debate issues on the side of issues, too, so far, that she doesn't agree with. So I've been helping her with that, as well as a few other things. And this newfound time is allowing me to do things like that. So thank you for your support on the changes. And I continue to think about how to make them better, funnier, more positive, while still giving you all of the information I possibly can to help you think through these important issues that so many of us face every day. So keep those ideas coming. standupwithpete@gmail.com. And now it's time to get to my first guest. Coming up, Nomiki Konst, of course. I think you're really going to like that. She's running for Senate here in New York State. But first, it's time for the Kirschner Report. Glenn Kirschner, of course, a former federal prosecutor with 30 years of trial experience. Also served the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia for 24 years. He was the chief of the Homicide Section there. Served more than 6 years on active duty as an Army Judge Advocate General at JAG prosecutor, trying court-martial cases, handling criminal appeals. He's now an NBC legal analyst, as well as teaches criminal law at George Washington University. And most importantly, you can find him on his YouTube page now, where he posts videos every single day. Just go to youtube.com/Glenn Kirschner. Follow him on Twitter at Glenn Kirschner2 and let him know you heard him right here on Stand Up. Let's do it right now. The Kirschner Report. Have you ever played Cornhole, where I know it sounds filthy, but where you throw a little bag of corn into the platform with a hole in it?
I have, and I can't say I'm any good at it.
Yeah, I'm very good at it, it turns out.
Are you?
Yeah, I didn't think I would be, but I have the patience and athleticism and follow through that game requires. Do you like any of those beer drinking yard games at all? Horseshoes or...
I don't know about yard. Yeah, I mean, I'll play horseshoes. I'll play bocce. But you know what? I like throwing darts. I used to, come up in the bars in Jersey, probably before I was of legal drinking age. And we would throw darts all night. And I wasn't especially good, but I enjoyed it.
Do you have a dartboard now?
I don't. And I should get one.
Well, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you for joining me. And I'll talk to you hopefully soon again. Thank you. Justice matters. All right. I'm very happy to see you, my friend. Thank you for talking to me. Everybody wants to talk to Glenn Kirschner. So when you get a shot, you take it. And lots I want to talk about. But just first, this week's hearings, the January 6th committee hearings, as they're being referred to, your general thoughts on the importance of them happening finally.
It doesn't get any more important than this, Pete. And I think these will be unique hearings for a couple of reasons. One, you're not going to have 5 minutes of a Democrat asking questions and then 5 minutes of Jim Jordan or Louis Gohmert asking questions. Right. This is going to be a unified approach with a unified message, which is we're kind of here to save the democracy. So I think it's going to be a powerful presentation. The other reason I think it's going to be unique is because the investigative team, this is not a typical, House staff that has put together the 1,000 witness interviews and subpoenaed all sorts of documents and other evidence. It's a team of experienced former federal prosecutors from the world of RICO prosecutions, public corruption prosecutions, and yes, violent crime prosecutions. So that's why I've been watching this J6 committee investigation unfold, and it's reminded me of how we investigate RICO cases. So I am convinced that the information that they're about to present really will blow the roof off the House, which is what Representative Raskin has been promising all along. And then I also see some synergy between what we just learned yesterday, that the Proud Boys, including the head of the Proud Boys, Enrique Tarrio, were indicted for seditious conspiracy. And today's New York Times reporting, buried well down in the article about the upcoming J6 public hearings, was that day one, this Thursday, will kick off with evidence and information about a pre-attack meeting that was recorded by some documentary guy of the Proud Boys and their seditious conspiracy. That reinforces to me, Pete, that there's been coordination behind the scenes between the J6 investigative team and the DOJ, the prosecutors investigating this in the grand jury. So I've been using the O word recently, optimism. I feel optimistic that, these hearings will have the kind of impact they should have. And then DOJ will continue to feel the pressure and it will build, and they will have nowhere to go but to indict Donald Trump and company for the crimes that we are about to see with our own eyes.
Okay, well, from your lips to God's ears, and you're using the O word. There's only one O word better or equal to optimism, but family show. So will there be any criminal referrals? I guess that comes before indictments, which is what you just predicted. You think there's actually going to be the best case scenario here is that this committee, which doesn't have any jurisdiction on criminal referrals, will prove through their investigation, create public demand for it as well, that the Department of Justice, Merrick Garland Company, are going to have to, as a result, have criminal referrals.
Have to. So now, criminal referrals don't necessarily come before indictments because they've been investigating the Proud Boys, and the Proud Boys are already indicted for seditious conspiracy. But there will absolutely be criminal referrals of high government officials and politicians and members of Trump's administration and perhaps his family. There will be criminal referrals made by the January 6th committee. And Pete, once we see in prime time or in daytime, some of the hearings are scheduled for daytime. Once we see the evidence that proves beyond a reasonable doubt the crimes of Donald Trump and his co-conspirators, DOJ will lose all legitimacy if they decline to prosecute, to indict the people for the crimes that we see proved, albeit in the court of public opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you really think, I mean, when you hear Raskin talk with that kind of hyperbolic, blow the roof off the house, and then hear your analysis on it, does bring me optimism. I'm so wary of it. I'm so beaten down. No one is more than you paying such close attention to this and posting your videos daily. But I'm really excited to hear this. So success looks like what?
Well, success looks like a couple of things from these public hearings. One, if we get a full appreciation of precisely what Trump and company were doing to try to overturn the election results and undermine our democracy. Two, success looks like whatever legislation they can push through to prevent this from ever happening again. And three, success looks like criminal referrals. And I think we're going to get all three of those things. So, you know, I'm very much looking forward to these hearings kicking off. And I think they're going to be pivotal in this fight to protect our democracy.
Have you taken a look at, have you seen the reforms that they're hoping for? I mean, everything from abolishing the Electoral College to, well, I don't really know what else, but you mentioned that as one of the keys to success. And I have a hard time believing that Congress could pass some of these reforms, but I haven't paid that much attention to it. I don't know if you have.
So Congress, as presently constituted, you know, probably can't pass any reforms. So the one thing I hope does not come of this is that people are so demoralized that they don't go to the polls, or people hear that, well, my vote's probably not going to count because my state has passed this nefarious legislation to try to, you know, corruptly take the election from the winner and deliver it to the loser. And really, we need to continue to be engaged and inspired and get to the polls. You know, consequences and challenges be damned. We need to keep getting out to the polls. We got out in record numbers during the 2020 presidential election. I hope that the economy and gas prices and baby formula and the war in Ukraine doesn't, you know, so demoralize us that we throw up our hands, because that is giving it all over to the Republicans. And that is precisely what the Republicans want. I will not give them that satisfaction.
I appreciate that, and nor will I. Someone who I never wanted to give any satisfaction to, and I may have in the hallways at SiriusXM, is Steve Bannon. The Department of Justice indicted, how about that segue? The Department of Justice indicted Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon, but not Mark Meadows and Dan Scavino, who all worked for Trump at different points. So you made a whole video about this, and I encourage everybody to go watch that at YouTube, on your channel. But I guess I was disappointed that that happened, but should I not be?
Oh, you should be. I was disappointed, too. You know, the justice gods give us something one moment and the justice gods take something away from us the next, because Peter Navarro was indicted. We'll talk about that in a minute. And then hours later, we learned that Meadows and Scavino, who committed the precise same crime as Bannon and Navarro, were not going to be indicted. But Pete, let me not bury the lead. Nobody should interpret this as Meadows and Scavino are in the clear. And I did a deep dive video that was probably longer than anybody wanted to pay attention to. Let me try to boil it down to its essence. First of all, there are three leading possibilities. One, they had meetings with Navarro, Meadows, and Scavino on June 2nd. Why June 2nd? Because that's the day Navarro was subpoenaed to appear before the federal grand jury to talk about all of the communications he had with Donald Trump, which leads to the only logical conclusion that the federal grand jury is criminally investigating Donald Trump. My former office, the DC U.S. Attorney's Office, sat down with Peter Navarro on June 2nd. They probably had to come to Jesus. They said, listen, Pete, you can either cooperate fully, and maybe we can forego this, indictment for contempt of Congress, or you can, continue to Green Bay sweep yourself in and out of the scenario. And it looks like Green Bay swept himself right into an indictment. He probably said, I'm not cooperating. So they indicted him the very next day, or the indictment was unsealed the very next day. Pete, we often do coordinated interviews. So we could have done the same kind of interview with Meadows and Scavino the same day, separately. And maybe those two individuals said, okay, I'm done covering up Donald Trump's crimes. I'll start cooperating. And they didn't have to indict them. That's one possibility. Another possibility is that they're looking for Meadows, and they're looking at Meadows and perhaps Scavino as well, for a far larger criminal charge, like a conspiracy to commit offenses against the United States. 371 conspiracy, which a federal judge in California already found Donald Trump committed, right? And here's the thing. I'll use an analogy. You don't indict somebody for shoplifting. And not that I'm saying contempt of Congress is like shoplifting, but it is a misdemeanor. You don't indict somebody for shoplifting if you're about to indict them for murder. You don't indict necessarily a Mark Meadows, who was Mr. Treason Central, right? Taking everybody's phone calls and text messages. And you can almost see him taking those calls and saying, Mark Meadows here, how can I direct your treasonous call? He has got criminal liability for the overarching conspiracy. So let's not worry about the contempt of Congress right now. And here's the third thing, and I think this definitely plays in to Merrick Garland's thinking on these kind of issues. There's an old OLC memo. There's always another one, isn't there? Like the one that says you can't indict a sitting criminal president, which is ridiculous.
But they're just memos.
There's another memo, Pete, and it says, you know what? Generally, I think it's from like 2012. Generally, we shouldn't indict the president's inner circle, like his chief of staff, Mark Meadows, or his deputy chief of staff, Dan Scavino, if they don't comply with congressional subpoenas, because they probably have a pretty robust executive privilege claim. Now, we could defeat any executive privilege claim from Meadows and Scavino if we went into court and fought it. But, Merrick Garland's got that institutionalist streak in him that probably militated against indicting Meadows and Scavino because of their positions. Not a satisfying explanation, Pete, but I suspect that's part of what went into DOJ's thinking.
I'm only here for satisfying explanations. That's going to be the name of my new show.
I often leave folks unsatisfied.
As a matter of fact, I've called you in personal things, and you almost always satisfy me. I do want to say that. So let me ask you about Navarro real quick. He was complaining that he was arrested in a heavy-handed way to make a show of him. And as much as I want to treat Peter Navarro's face like a speed bag, he sounds right. The FBI didn't have to arrest him in public and put handcuffs and chain his legs together and all that. I feel like that was ridiculous. Am I wrong? I feel bad for Peter Navarro.
And in part, you're right. So first of all, they follow protocol when it comes to how, cuffing and using leg shackles and all that. They follow protocol. What I heard, and if this is accurate, I take exception with, I'm not a big fan of the perp walk, as much as we can all kind of celebrate it when we see people getting their just desserts. I think our government should be above the perp walk for public relations benefit. But if they really did let him get on a plane only to pull him off a plane when they arrested him, that I don't think was necessary. They could have got him, when he was pulling up to the airport or when he left his house. So it does feel like, if that's accurate, there was perhaps more of a public show than was necessary. And I don't like or appreciate when our law enforcement agencies, including the FBI and the federal prosecutors, play that game. But here's what I love about Navarro. I love the fact that he thinks if he gives his criminal conduct a cute nickname, the Green Bay Sweep, then I guess it's not criminal. Because let's be clear, he was engaged in a criminal scheme to corruptly overturn the results of a presidential election, but he kept going on TV and just saying, no, it was just the Green Bay Sweep. To which I respond, okay, if I rob a bank and I get caught, as Peter Navarro has certainly been caught in his crimes, and I say, whoa, rob a bank. No, I call that the Tom Brady accelerated withdrawal play. No, that's not criminal.
Right.
You can't prosecute me for that. That's my comedy bit for the day. I'm sorry, Pete. That's the best I got.
No, it's good. It's good. I appreciate it. I love the football reference because that's where it started. I mean, it does, I guess, obfuscate what they were doing. All right, before I let you go, I want to ask you, I saw this tweet that you shared from somebody, I don't know who this is, but John Durham Russia probe arrests or guilty pleas in 3 years. 1. Merrick Garland, January 6th arrests or guilty pleas in 16 months, 850. I mean, you could probably also look at the Mueller investigation, too, and other investigations. What does this say about the whole John Durham, which was, I guess, the conservative investigation into Trump Russia, the Trump investigation into Trump Russia?
Yeah, so the John Durham investigation was commissioned by Bill Barr as a way to try to give Donald Trump cover for his crimes. And it was a distraction. And it should have been laid to rest. They should have, folded up that circus tent. And I wish Merrick Garland would have. I think his fear in shutting it down is it would be perceived as partisan. But you know what? You have to do the right thing, even if people are going to accuse you of doing things for political or partisan reasons. So he went to trial in one case, and he went down in flames, John Durham. He brought a case against the lawyer, and it's not just me. It's, people of consequence like Barb McQuaid, who was like, this case stinks. And I'm paraphrasing her, but this does not look like a strong or even a righteous prosecution. Some lawyer provided information, but he neglected to say one of his firm's clients was Hillary Clinton. Come on now. That's not the kind of case the Department of Justice typically brings. And he went down in flames. Within 6 hours, a unanimous jury came back and said, not guilty. And are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Bringing a case like this? The forewoman of the jury, Pete, gave an interview on the courthouse steps and said, and I quote, our time could have been better spent. And that's on the prosecution.
Oh, wow.
Boy, what a rebuke. And you know how that hit my ear? Our time could have been better spent if you brought us, I don't know, Donald Trump and his co-conspirators to actually be tried for trying to kill our democracy. That's how we could have spent our time more wisely as jurors. So I hope Merrick Garland will rethink letting John Durham and the ghost of Bill Barr run amok by continuing to try to, undermine the Trump-Russia investigation.
Yeah, wow. I had no idea about any of that. All right, I'll let you go, but I want to ask you, did you watch The Wire, and are you watching We Own This City on HBO?
I watched some of The Wire, not all of it. I loved what I watched. I'm not a huge binge watcher guy, but I haven't seen, what is the new series called?
It's David Simon as well. He did The Wire. It's called We Own This City. It's about the Baltimore Police Department and during and post Freddie Gray. Anyway, if you watch it, I'd love to get your take on.
I will watch it. And I read, I don't know if it was Simon's book. I think it may have been, or maybe he adapted it into the Wire, but Homicide, Life on the Streets, which was the book that kind of started it all.
Yeah.
And that's a brilliant, brilliant read if anybody wants, a great inside look into police work in Baltimore.
I always want to hear your takes on all that stuff, too, because, of course, you had a tremendous amount of experience there. So thank you. As always, buddy, I really appreciate it. That was awesome.
Thanks, Pete. Great talking to you.
And there he goes, at Glenn Kirschner 2. Please go tweet him. Let him know that you heard him here on Stand Up. He does a lot of shows, but he's never better than when he's on with me. And a good friend of mine. Love Glenn and really appreciate him very much whenever he joins me. And whenever he calls me, whenever he checks up on me, just a really, really good, solid guy and friend. Another old friend of mine joins me now. It's Nomiki Konst. I think you're going to really like my conversation with her. But first, I've got to tell you about this. For your company, for their next hire, you want them to have great problem-solving skills, right? You want the next person you hire to think like an entrepreneur. Well, I've got the thing you need help with. How to find them. It's easy. You need Indeed, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed.com is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. And instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed's a powerful hiring partner that can help you do it all. So find great talent faster through time-saving tools like Indeed Instant Match assessments and virtual interviews. With Instant Match, over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. You hear me? So as soon as you sponsor a job, you're going to get great candidates, according to Indeed U.S. One of the things I love about Indeed, it makes hiring all in one place. And I've got listeners, several that have reached out to me and said, Indeed has worked for them and it could work for you. So save yourself the headaches. No downloads, plugins, or purchases. You do it all in one place with Indeed.com. After using their virtual interviewers, most employers said it saved them days of hiring time. Indeed is the only job site where you only pay for applications that meet your must-have requirements. Join more than 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And if you sign up for Indeed right now, you get a $75 credit toward your first sponsored job, plus earn up to $500 in sponsored job credits with Indeed's virtual interviews. Visit Indeed.com/standup to learn more. Claim your credits at Indeed.com/standup. Indeed.com/standup. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. There you go. You can thank me later as well for this conversation with Nomiki Konst, who joins me now. She is just announced that she is going to run for state senate in New York State, a newly drawn district, an open primary, or running as in a Democratic primary, I should say, in a district that covers a big part of Queens, part of Brooklyn, part of Manhattan. She's a journalist. She's an activist. She's a political commentator known for her work from the Young Turks to all the cable news networks, and now at the Majority Report with Sam Cedar. She hosts her own program, The Nomiki Show, and I think you are going to like my conversation with her on Twitter at Nomiki Konst, Konst. Ladies and gentlemen, let's do it. Okay, there she is. Nomiki, thank you very much for joining me. I'm so happy to actually see you. It's been way too long since I've seen you, other than, I guess, social media. It's one of those things. But yesterday you called me, you told me you've announced this run, so let's talk about it. Congrats.
Thank you so much, Pete. Yeah, we used to see each other in the Sirius XM studio back in the old days when we were both there. You were like a godfather to me.
Do you know what'd you say?
You were like a godfather to me, always giving me the wisdom of your sage ways of that universe.
Oh, I completely forgot about those talks where we talked about the industry, the company, and career stuff. But those are some great chats. I always love those. How did we meet? How do we know each other? I don't know.
I don't know. I think it was before Sirius.
Yeah.
Maybe you had me on or something, or maybe we met in a green room, or I know one time you saw me. We were at the Washington Square Park. Do you remember this? The Washington Square Park Bernie rally. And you saw there was like this insane long line. And this is so schmoozy, but like I was doing a debate night at CNN and for the Republicans, weirdly, but they were having me as a Democrat. And I had to leave Bernie's rally and then like rush uptown on the subway to CNN. And I was like sweating and and you'd stop me and it was totally nuts. It was a very
I do remember
wacky
that.
time in my life.
I definitely remember bumping into you at places, and it was always the case. Well, I'm happy to.
We're just that old. We don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Well, we cross paths so many places, especially through media and politics. You've been involved in and so many things. I mean, you've had an amazing career in media and activism and politics, and you've been involved in so many other people's campaigns, your own as well, and now you're back at it. So, but who are you? Who is Nomiki? I mean, like.
Oh, great question.
Yeah,
Politico tried to ask that a few years ago, and we slapped them with a legal letter.
Who did?
I don't want to get into it.
Well,
politics is a rough sport.
Yeah.
And so, you have to be prepared for people to come at you if you're independent, if you're an activist, if you're on the left. I gotta say, I think there are a lot of very powerful interests who are afraid of the left taking power and continuing to take power. And I think that this is the question that's not asked enough. Candidates on the left don't really get the opportunity to talk about their records and their history. And so I'm glad that you asked this question, because it is like we are really shut out of the media, and other people want to tell our narratives. And we don't necessarily always have the resources to do so. So first off, I just want to thank you for having me on. You've done a really great job, as you know, being at SiriusXM. It's tough. And then you started your own show, and you've been very successful. And I think more independent media, more independent voices, more independent folks running for office is going to be what's changing this country. So kudos to you, Pete, for figuring it out.
So thank you very much. Yeah, it's been quite a journey, and I agree with your analysis there, of course, as I do most of the time with your views on things. But even with the things that I might disagree with you on, which I can't name any, I don't know. But I'm sure you could convince me. You're a very convincing person when it comes to policy and advocacy. But wait, so are you first generation Greek American? And were you born in Arizona? Is that the deal? Is Wikipedia right?
I don't know what's up with Wikipedia right now. I haven't checked in a while, but they're always messing around with stuff. I get a lot of like Proud Boys up in there, like shaking things up. And every once in a while I'll see like the photo will be like really unflattering. I'm like, who put that up? And then it links back to some weirdo, like right-wing
Here's
troll.
Nomiki in mid sneeze.
Literally. There was one so bad. I never look at it. And then people will say, did you check your Wikipedia page, get that photo? And it's like a photo of me, like with my mouth open, screaming at someone. It's like the Nancy Pelosi shots. They always find a really bad Nancy shot.
Yeah.
And AOC, she goes through this too. Yeah. So I was born in Tucson, Arizona. I lived there until I was 5. I grew up in Buffalo, New York, where my dad was from. And then I went back to Arizona. I went to University of Arizona. So that's my Arizona connection. I have my mom's side of the family who moved from Chicago to Arizona because my grandmother had asthma and was a seamstress. And that was the place she could go to survive. And that was how my mom's side of the family landed in Arizona. My dad's side of the family, they came to Buffalo, New York, and he had his roots there. I grew up there. My mom, of course, was there too. And my mom ended up getting involved in local politics and being a local elected official. My grandfather was also very involved locally on my dad's side, but he was a Republican, and let's just ignore all that. But yeah, so Buffalo was really, I would say, where my political worldview was shaped, and my worldview just in life. My 20th high school reunion was on Friday, and I missed it because I'm running for office. And I was like looking at the photos, and that's the one where everyone gets old. Basically.
Yeah, I know. I've just spent the weekend with a bunch of my high school buddies, and oh my gosh, is everybody old and broken. So, but what did shape you? What was it your parents? Was your mom's running for and being in office? Was it a book? Was it a sibling? Was it an experience? Was it issues in Buffalo? What was it that formed your political views?
Well, you asked me about what generation I am Greek. I am Greek on both sides. My mother's family in particular. So she was first generation. I'm second generation. My grandparents were from an area of Albania that was a Greek area, a Greek minority area in Albania. And they were in separate times. They met in America. They both escaped Hoxha, who was the autocratic, in the name of communism, but really very forceful and made Stalin look like he had differentiating opinions on Stalin, thought he was too weak, which says a lot, right?
Wow.
Yep. So my grandparents escaped southern Albania into Greece. My grandfather in particular, we're learning a lot more about his history. I was very close to them. He was asked to be a spy for the Albanian government because he spoke fluent Greek and had been going back and forth from northern Greece to Albania, and said no. And within pretty much minutes, he was put on a list to be killed, and his family. And he had to escape through the mountains of Albania in the middle of the winter. Overnight, there was a woman who died along the way. It was extremely dangerous, and into Greece. And he was the only boy in the family. His father had died when he was 2, had no money, spent the next several years scraping together pennies to be able to, no joke, get on to the very last boat that entered Ellis Island. So my grandfather's story, and it's much more complicated and it reads like a spy novel in many cases. It was pretty extraordinary, as was my grandmother's. But I grew up hearing these stories. I grew up being told how important freedom of speech and independence and thoughtfulness and democratic values were because of just how they ended up on this, in the U.S. They, like so many Americans, just sacrificed literally everything for me. And that really did help me kind of make my decision when I was deciding whether or not to run in this newly created district that is in my community. And I just thought this is exactly what my grandmother would have pushed me to do. And she would have said, this was historically a Greek community. It's not so much anymore, but there is that value to my part of the community, at least part of the district is historically Greek. I think she would have been like, go do it.
That's great. That's great.
I spent a lot of time with my grandparents growing up, a lot of time. Yeah.
What is it you identify as a democratic socialist? I think I do too. Although I don't even know what I am. I always want to talk about my views on things, but I certainly closely identify to that. I'm not even sure if I know what anything means anymore. What does it mean to you? Obviously, you can identify that way and win this Senate race because of the diversity of ideology, and I guess the progressive ideology in the district that you're running in. But what is it, how do you describe it to people without, I guess some people are either confused, ignorant, or terrified of it?
Well said. So Bernie Sanders had a really great definition for democratic socialism. It was very simple and concrete, but I think really gets to the core of what it means for me. He said that democratic socialism to him is more democracy. And, going back to my grandparents, more democracy means more voices, more ideas. Especially in 2016, as you know, I was on the Bernie campaign. I was a big part of challenging the DNC and their use of their rules in superdelegates and forcing candidates on us. And I think fundamentally, that's a very important part of the left, whether or not you believe in democratic socialism and all of the values that they're fighting, those who identify as democratic socialists fight for in this country, or if you just believe in a more open, transparent democratic process. This is what sets us apart from pretty much everyone else. I mean, even Western democracies don't have freedom of speech. This is really what makes us unique. Now, it's a constant tug and, a pull and tug in our country because we do have a right wing that is taking advantage of all of these rights and using it through money. But I believe that when we have more democracy, we have more ideas. And when you have more ideas and you have an equal playing ground, you have more of an opportunity to push for progress. Now, the right wing right now has taken advantage of this country and loopholes by stacking the courts, I think breaking the law in many cases, gerrymandering the hell out of this country. But when you actually look at the population of this country and you look at things like freedom of choice, gun regulation, gun control laws, when you look at immigration laws, when you look at all of the major issues that we fight for, fully funding public education and our teachers, most Americans are more progressive on those issues. Yeah. So I do think that this country is far more progressive than maybe even folks are willing to comprehend or admit. And that I think is because we do have those basic values. With that being said, we have monopolies and we have, unchecked corporate power, and, minimum wage is extremely low, and income inequality is extremely stark, especially in my district, which is the most left district in the state at this point. So I really am a big believer in economic and social justice, racial and gender justice, all overlapping. Intersectional politics is, I think, part of that path of having more democracy and fairness in our society. I don't believe in special interests controlling lawmakers. It's very hard. I think that sometimes that can operate within organizations who have an agenda, and we have to be very conscious of that as well.
What is your criticism, if you have any, of kind of mainstream Democrats now or in throughout your career? I mean, you're
setting me up, man.
No, is that a bad question for you right now? I'm kind of
no. I'm kidding.
I don't want to hurt the campaign. It's a very friendly interview. I mean, I obviously I'm supporting you. I've known you for a long time, but I just think it's an interesting question and an important question because it separates. There's a lot of nuance there. We don't hear that nearly as much in mainstream conversations about politics, much less conversations people are having at their barbecues, their homes. I mean, we're all in the same bucket. We all believe the same thing, but it couldn't be further from the truth. So I wonder what some of the differences or criticisms that you have of, some of the mainstream Democrats, who are many of which are, most Democrats are fairly progressive. And in my mind, if they're not progressive, they can be more closely identified to the kind of corporate Democrats because they get money from certain special interests, which you mentioned. But it would seem that the party has moved to the left a lot, not like the Republicans have moved not to the right, but off the cliff onto earth too. Yeah. But it would seem like progressives have moved more towards things like universal health care and college loan forgiveness, although that is controversial now. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is such an interesting question because there are the issues that we, as Democrats as a whole, believe in, where there are issues that even our Democratic lawmakers will campaign on. But then when it comes to legislating, there's always an excuse. There's always, there's a parliamentarian. Oh, there's Joe Manchin. I can't do anything. Chuck Schumer's like, I can't do anything about Joe Manchin, except you're Chuck Schumer and you actually can. There's always some sort of excuse when the rubber meets the road. I was on this thing called the Democratic Party's Unity Reform Commission, which sounds really wonky. And I didn't think anybody knew what it was or cared about it until the final meeting after 2 years, in which I accidentally dropped an F-bomb that went viral on C-SPAN. And
oh dear!
So that's how people know about the Unity Reform Commission, because I had a little bit of a rant and I dropped an F-bomb and called the party corrupt. But this commission was set to reform the Democratic Party, not just the presidential primary process that was very controversial in 2016, but the actual internal workings of the DNC. And that, to me, is actually the root cause of why so many lawmakers are beholden to certain folks. We have a couple of things that have happened in this country, and I think it is criminal, frankly. The Democratic National Committee has raises a lot of money off of well-meaning folks, small dollar donations, and even well-meaning, very wealthy people. Except most of that money goes to presidential elections. And as I said in that rant, to a handful of political consultants who make money off of media buys and whatever they do with that money. The Democratic National Committee has never had any sort of like real budget oversight, no prior budget approval, no oversight. And as a result, the democracy part, going back to that original question, has been lost in the DNC. DNC members from all over the country run for DNC. And a few people who are appointed basically usurp them in terms of their vote by voting for these consultants. Those people are often those appointed members consultants themselves. So what does that mean? What does that mean for democracy? Well, it means all that money is not going to state parties. It is not going to finding and recruiting and training the next generation of local lawmakers and staff that can get them elected. So, we have states like Texas, which could very well be Democratic if we really put the work in. Arizona, which went completely blue in 2006. When I was in college and we worked on the Young Democrats of America campaign there, we turned it blue. We had a Democratic governor who later went to go work for Obama, and then Arizona was left with a Republican governor afterwards. There are many parts of this country. Pennsylvania could absolutely be blue. But because all of this money is not being put into nurturing local Democratic parties and the next generation of leaders from the ground up, the way that the Koch brothers have over the last 40 years, we are losing major fights like, choice, gay rights, LGBTQ rights, trans issues. Teachers are being attacked. There are, we know in every single aspect of this country right now, teachers are being attacked, not just because they're teachers, but because the teachers union is the largest donor to the Democratic Party. So the Republicans are all over the place. There's no corner of the country they are not trying to compete in for the long game. And the Democrats are like, go raise some money and figure it out yourself. And so we lose these rights. And it's why legislatures like the New York State legislature in particular are so important, because it's one of the final places where we can actually make some real progress that could affect the rest of the country.
For example, the bill that got signed yesterday by the New York State Governor, Kathy Hochul, where a whole bunch of new reforms that will hopefully reduce gun violence. Like, that's a state accomplishment, right? That's what you're talking about? Exactly.
And in that case, she's willing to take on, hate speech online and holding tech companies accountable. This is very serious, because it's not just that hate speech, and some of these places on the internet are recruiting and radicalizing folks, mainly young men, let's be real, young white men. But it is, the bullying online is causing a suicide. I mean, there have been statistics in terms of young people, not just young people, actually just people altogether, who their mental health has been affected and suicide rates are up. And some of this stuff can be at least inquired about with these tech companies in terms of how their algorithms push these narratives or become self-fulfilling prophecies. Like, so it's, the way the algorithms are set up. I mean, I know, like, if you and I come on here and we start shouting at each other, guess what? If you put this on YouTube, it's probably going to do better if we have a really calm, lovely conversation about the issues. You see it with a lot of people on YouTube. They'll go after the squad. They'll hate them. They'll talk about drama. There's a lot of misogyny. There's a lot of hate, and it spills over into other social media platforms. And that becomes part of this ecosystem where people want to act out. And if you have weak gun laws, put together with that, it's a recipe for disaster.
Why are you running for this office? Like, what do you think, like, specifically, what are the issues that the folks in your district, is that what you call a state senate? District? District 59. Care about? It's very diverse. It's in Astoria, right? I mean, you've lived there.
It's Astoria, Long Island City, Greenpoint, North Williamsburg, and then it goes over to Manhattan and hits Stuyvesant Town, Peter Cooper Village, very historic neighborhood, Gramercy, and Kips Bay, basically.
Wow. I mean, you have people from every single ethnic background, fair to say.
Yes, it is. It's a diverse district. It's not as diverse as many other parts of the state. I would say there are definitely districts that are more diverse. It is a district that has a complicated history of many communities have been part of this district. I'll just say that. Right now, I'm going to be real. There's a lot of gentrification happening in this district, as is all over New York State right now, and New York City, in particular. So the district, I live in Astoria. Astoria is absolutely a core part of this district. It is the largest voting base. It is the largest geographic base. And I am the only candidate from Astoria who's running in Astoria, who has roots in Astoria and was recruited by Astoria, organizers and leaders and community members to run. And part of that is really just because the issues that we've been fighting for in Astoria over the last decade in particular have been a reflection of just sort of the greater issues that the New York State legislature needs to be dealing with. We have Long Island City, which is the fastest growing city in America right now.
Wow.
It is where we fought off Amazon in 2019, that big Amazon deal. With that big Amazon deal came a bunch of real estate deals too. There was a rezoning to build apartments that were going to be filled with Amazon employees, supposedly. And either way, those apartments and many, many other apartments in Long Island City, glass towers, are nowhere near filled occupancy. Now, just a few hundred feet away, there is the largest public housing in the country, Queensbridge Houses. Not to mention Astoria Houses, There's 4 other NYCHA, New York Public Housing, in the district as well. You have the income inequality in this district is extraordinarily stark. Folks who've lived on the waterfront in public housing or otherwise have been dealing with transportation issues, 1 bus an hour, maybe, being far away from the subway, being in a food desert for decades, and have been complaining about it. But now that there are these like expensive high rises that no one's living in, I mean, I'm not saying nobody, there are definitely residents, but nowhere near capacity. And they just keep building. And they're empty. There are no lights on. They want to build these new spots where like expensive grocery stores like Innovative Queens will exist. But who are those grocery stores and those shops serving? The people who've been in the community, who've been complaining about not having access to food, grocery stores, transportation. No, of course not. These are bougie little shops that are showing up. It's creating a speculative market where people around the district, their rents are going up. Eric Adams wants to increase rent stabilized apartments. I live in a rent stabilized apartment. This is not the answer to the pandemic.
Right.
This is not how we solve these issues by just putting more of a tax on working people, whether it's a direct tax or just increasing their cost of living while not increasing the infrastructure that we need to survive in the city, whether it's, public housing having the repairs that they need, or fully funding our transportation, the MTA, including subways and buses, or just having basic, care in the community. It's a pretty stark reminder of, I hate to use the cliche because de Blasio did it, the Tale of Two Cities.
What do you think of Eric Adams, the mayor?
Oh boy.
Is that another complex, or is it simple?
I wish the Democratic National Committee would look at the vote tallies on how he won, because they seem to think he's the future of the Democratic Party. But I think New Yorkers, if you look at not just his approval ratings and his disapproval ratings, but how many votes actually came in for him, this was, of course, ranked choice voting, they would be surprised that he actually, people love to complain about de Blasio. And de Blasio was by no means perfect. But let's not forget the mayors we've had. Let's start off with Rudy Giuliani, star of the show. Rudy Giuliani was definitely not better than de Blasio. I would say Michael Bloomberg, stop and frisk Michael Bloomberg, who never met a person of color he didn't want to arrest. Nowhere near the top of the list. And I think Eric Adams is complicated, and I don't think he is rooted in reality. I don't think he wants to be rooted in reality. I think he thinks this is a show, like it's the 80s, and he can run around town and go to zero bond and eat expensive meals, say he's a vegan, but eat fish, whatever his silly shtick is.
So stupid.
Wearing flashy suits, but then talks about how the crime is horrible. And then also New York City's back. Well, pick it. What are you saying here? Right. I'm really concerned, I think, with so many other people in New York, that his solution to the unusual crime wave, which is nowhere near what it was 10 years ago, nowhere near.
Near its peaks, important to mention, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's New York has been the safest it's ever been. The crime that we've seen that is unusual, including a mass shooting, we're trying to, a lot of criminologists are trying to figure out what is the root cause. Right. But is it just guns? No, because people are getting slashed. Is it mental health? Probably in many cases. People are being pushed onto subway platforms. All of these things are part of this, but the answer shouldn't be put more money into a police, to the NYPD that already has more money than like most armies in this world do. It's the New York State budget in particular. Let's just say this is like Russia's budget. Like, let's just be real about what we're looking at here. And Eric Adams for New York City wants to put more money into the NYPD. How many of those officers are going to be retrained? How many of those officers are coming in from other communities, as we know? He promised all these things like community policing and massive reforms, but he hasn't. He's just doubled down on some strategies that didn't work.
How important? Well, I was just going to ask you how important that issue is. Police reform, law enforcement reform, whatever you want to call it, in your district. I know you have always had thoughts about it, but how much do people think about it? How much of it is it a problem where you're running?
will. I've been petitioning all week and talking to voters, and even the most progressive voters are concerned about their safety. They're concerned about what they perceive as crime that cannot be quantified, or not that it ever can be, but I think folks who are used to living in communities that have been very safe for the last 10 years are concerned. I mean, there was a slashing right in front of my apartment like a week ago. I saw a bunch of cop cars around and didn't know what was going on. And, I get it, and I feel their pain. I think the question is, what do we do with it, and how do we address it?
Right.
I do think that people in my district know very well, if you just fund the police more and more, it's not going to solve the problem.
Right.
But, we have an unhoused problem in our city. We have so many empty apartments, so many empty hotels that are no longer being used, that we could work with. We obviously have a healthcare crisis in our city. We do put more money into mental health than probably most cities, if not all of them in the country. With that being said, we need to pass the New York Health Act first, which we're only a few votes away from doing. And hopefully I will be part of that. And that'll help. We have to tax these real estate developers who are creating a lot of this division in this city, making it so that people can't afford to live at home anymore.
That seems like a tough one because they have so much influence and power. Right.
They do. And they came after me last time. Very hardcore.
Yeah.
But we knew it when it was coming. It was very difficult, but people know where I stand on real estate developers, and I'm not backing down. I mean, these are the same guys who are lobbying folks to build more apartments. So what? Foreign oligarchs can just place their money into our apartments? Come on now. Like, you can't sit here and say like Russia's a bad actor and then, willfully take their money to hide in our real estate, which creates more economic instability in our city.
So you are running in District 59 for New York State Senate. Senate District 17 was eliminated, and it's confusing, and we've talked about it a little bit here on the show, but how much time do you have to get your name on the ballot? When is the election? What a crazy summer, I guess this is going to be for you.
I know. I was going to take a vacation. I was going to go see family.
Well, I've seen you. I've creeped your social media. It must be Instagram, right? And I feel like you've been in Latin America a lot over the past year.
So funny you say that. I actually have been working on a documentary in Puerto Rico since 2017, post Hurricane Maria. So I go down there usually for a couple of days every few months to do a little bit of shooting. We're pretty much in editing right now. But it is a documentary I started working on when I went down to cover Hurricane Maria soon after the storm, and then just started to learn more and more about what's happening in Puerto Rico. A lot of it's based on status. It has to do with tax status too. There is a major. It's a very sad thing that's happening in terms of the tax. There's some tax incentives there that are. A lot of folks from wealthy folks from the U.S., the states, are moving to Puerto Rico to avoid taxes because as an American citizen, it's the one place on the planet you can get away with paying zero taxes.
Wow.
And it's creating an extraordinary speculative market. So I've been working on that documentary for 4.5 years, back and forth. So that's probably what you're seeing. But it's been a lot. It's been a lot of work. And it's, I'm grateful to the diaspora here in New York too, because they've been a big part of that process as well. It's a community effort that we've been putting
there's
together.
Like more Puerto Ricans in New York than there are in Puerto Rico, I think. Is that true?
I don't know if it's true. I think it's hard because people go back and forth, especially post Maria. It's hard to know what the numbers are still. And there are more that are, in Florida and Orlando. And it's, the status issue, if I can say, because I know a lot of folks have some thoughts on it, but there is a bill right now in Congress for self-determination, for process of self-determination, which is what we do when we have colonies, is we ask the people of the colony to say, what do you want to do to become democratic? Do you want to be a state? Do you want to be free association? Do you want to be independent? Do you want to be, some other process? But you always go to them and say, please tell us what you want to do. And here's a process, rather than we tell them because we want a 51st state, which, by the way, can't even guarantee that it would be democratic because there are a lot of conservents on the island of Puerto Rico.
Because of what I wonder what that's about. Well, I digress into Puerto Rico maybe for another time. But anyway, when is the primary?
Oh, the election. Okay. So the election's August 23rd. I can't believe it. Yeah. Yep. It's about 2.5 months away.
And you're working right now to get signatures to get on the ballot?
Yeah.
That where you're
on
at?
Saturday or Friday, we have our deadline, the 10th. We need to get signatures to get on the ballot from people in the district that are registered as Democrats. If you're listening and you're in my district and I haven't met you yet at a subway platform or on the street or anybody else from our campaign, we're not doing our work because I've been doing a lot of that and my voice is starting to go. But I'll tell you right now. So there's about, I think 5 or 6 people who are in this race. I think one's running as an independent, so not part of the primary. But this is a race in which you have people from a lot of different ideologies, different geographies running. There are 2 people in the race who are running in a completely different district, who don't have the roots that maybe the rest of the candidates do. But this is a race that is so low turnout because it's in August and people aren't familiar with the redistricting process that's been chaotic and why we have new lines. But it is an open seat. There's no incumbent. It's a race that will be, I believe, won on ideas. It's an overwhelmingly progressive district. So whatever happens, my guess is a progressive will win because there are a lot of progressives running right now. One, maybe not so much, but she also doesn't live in the district and in her last race didn't do so well in this area. So, but real estate backed. So you never know with real estate. Yep. Yeah.
Well,
so it's fun.
Fun is one description, I suppose, but it'll be interesting to follow the campaign. And I really appreciate you joining me here. And as always, putting your name in the ring. It's going to be a wild ride, but you've done it a few times. And here's hoping to your success. It would be really interesting, amazing to see you in the New York State Senate. And then I'll still have access to you, won't I? I'll still be able to can I not text you anymore if you're a senator?
Text me. Listen, so a few years ago when the IDC existed, I was one of those early people who organized and fought the IDC. But the most fun about going to fight the IDC, those Democrats who were caucusing with Republicans, was building the relationships with the senators who wanted them out. You go up to Albany, and I learned a lot from these senators, and I still have those relationships. So this matters because maybe you're next. Maybe you're going to run.
No.
Maybe.
No,
why not?
I got drafted last year, recruited last year, and it's for town council. And I thought I actually was going to do it, and then it was too late to get my name on the ballot. And then I realized in just supporting other candidates for the BOE race, which I got really involved in, they would have destroyed me and my family even worse mainly because I've said so many things on camera, on stage, especially as a comedian, where in this day and age, progressives, anybody, it doesn't matter who you are, certainly conservatives, they just take what you say and I've just said so much. So it's it would just be horrible for me. So I realized that, but I'm happy.
You can shake it off. I mean, listen,
I don't think so. I would love to run for office. I would love to be in office. I think I'd be really good at the job, but I know the campaign would be a destruction for my family at this point. Maybe someday.
I hope to change your mind someday.
Yeah, not while the kids are home. I mean, it already got ugly enough. Just being a supporter for the BOE campaign, which I'll tell you more about at some point. But I'm excited for you, Nomiki, and no one better than you. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens. And maybe you'll be able to join me again at some point this summer. And maybe I'll come in and be able to see you and volunteer or something.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. If you guys want to volunteer or contribute, oh my gosh, we have to raise so much money so fast. I can't even. I don't know how anyone can do it, but
so where do people go for that? And I'll link it in the show notes. Of course.
You can go to Nomiki, Nomiki for New York.com. And there's a contribution form there. There is a volunteer form. We just put up our expanded COVID policy, which turns out nobody has at all. I was like, remember that thing called COVID, which everyone I know is in bed with right now? Like literally almost everybody. Wow. Losing work. These are vaxxed people. These are boosted people. We're still dealing with it. And the CDC just said, make sure to wear your mask not because of COVID, wearing masks on the plane because of monkeypox. So,
is that right?
Yeah, that just came out today.
Oh, wow. I hadn't seen that. Well, that's great. That is fantastic. Yeah. Monkeypox sounds fun. That's a great sounding thing.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll let you go. Nomiki, thank you so much for joining me. It's great to see you, hear from you, and the best of luck.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you, Pete.
All right, there she goes, Nomiki Konst. Go say hello to her on Twitter
Go support her campaign. Go watch the Nomiki show and subscribe. And that is all I've got for you. Thank you to Glenn Kirschner. Thank you to you for listening, for subscribing with a paid subscription, for telling your friends about it. Hope to see you tomorrow night at our Hangout watch party. Hope to see you at any point on the Discord platform. Hope to see you in the shed. Come on over to the shed. That might be weird. There's not a lot of room. I love you guys. Thank you very much. Be the change you want to see in the world. And I will talk to you tomorrow.
Please, that's the time you gotta finally get up off of your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. You got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. And even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up. Stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up. Stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. This is the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up, we got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you